What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Moving on to Warriors Sixers. So kind of a classic Nick Nurse game in the sense that from the opening tip, he takes Jaden Springer and just tells him to face guard Steph Curry all over the floor. They were doing really physical handoff switches too, where like Jaden's like hands on Steph as he's moving around. And then if there's a screen that he gets caught on, it's like he's almost like passing Steph to the next guy who's immediately got his hands on him. And like they're just being physical all over the place. And as a result, like there was just a ton of space for the Warriors to play 4-on-4 basketball off of him, right? And like and again, like Nick Nurse is always into this like kind of janky defensive scheme where he's super aggressive, throw the damn kitchen sink at your best player and just kind of live with the results on the backside. And this was kind of a textbook Nick Nurse night in that regard. But they were blitzing him on ball screens. They were just forcing anybody else to beat them, and they did. I thought Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga sprang the biggest run of the game there in the late second, early third quarter. They just bring wave after wave of athleticism to the table. Like Jonathan Kuminga was just beating them up the floor for transition dunks. Andrew Wiggins pushing in transition with the ball in his hands, being active around the rim as a cutter and as an offensive rebounder. And then that group brought the beginning of the run there at the end of the second quarter. And they came out in the first quarter and they just completely blitzed the Sixers, and it was a blowout in no time. And honestly, it's just a really athletic group when you have those two guys out there. And this is something I've been preaching on pretty much all season after as we were approaching the deadline. Like, lean on Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Andrew Wiggins as your front line, because it's your best combination of athleticism and physicality to give you your best bet at contending in the physical areas of the game, because you are not going to be some jaw-dropping offense when Steph Curry's really your only reliable offensive option, like consistent, reliable offensive option. So like you need to win games with athleticism. You need to win games with perimeter defense and physicality and speed. And that lineup gives you your best bet. And it was interesting because Steve Kerr had mentioned earlier in the season that he didn't like the Kuminga-Wiggins front line, and that they had struggled in the numbers, and he wanted to try to make it work, but that it hadn't worked to that point in the season. Well, over the course of the last 10 games, we have 139 minutes of Jonathan Kuminga, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green as the front line. They have a 125 offensive rating, which is off the charts good, and a 97 defensive rating, which is off the charts good. And like, here's the thing. There's going to be moments where Andrew Wiggins has a tough offensive night and Jonathan Kuminga is just not quite as sharp as he usually is, and the offense will be able to grind down a little bit. That's going to be baked into some of the limitations of that lineup, but it gives them the ability to really grind out games in an ugly way. This is a team that needs to get stops and run out in transition. This is a team that needs to bring real downhill force to the rim to try to just muck things up and win ugly with matchup attacking and I'm just bigger and faster than you type of stuff, right? They don't have a legit number two option. And so they're not going to be some crazy consistent offense the way that like a Denver is going to be. And so I think that lineup gives them their best opportunity to kind of bring that athleticism and defensive end of the floor into the equation more frequently. And again, like 139 minutes is a substantial sample size. That's again, it's in a 10-game span, but like they've been kicking people's asses with that group. And that's something super encouraging. And like, honestly, the next step here is like Kerr's leaning on it more in general as a lineup, but I think he needs to lean on it in crunch time too, because we've seen that the Warriors have had trouble maintaining their success when they get into close games late. That's been a consistent issue throughout the season. What have they lost? 18 games this year that have been within 5 points with less than 5 minutes left. So it's been a consistent issue. And I think sticking with that group longer gives them their best chance to contend in the short term during this regular season. I also thought it was pretty encouraging games from Klay Thompson and from Kevon Looney. Both of them have been struggling a lot here in the middle portion of the season. Looney was super active on the glass and just his usual kind of like physical ground bound game. And Klay Thompson, just a really under control game, took the right shots, contended in the physicality areas. It was a really encouraging night all around for the Warriors. And by the way, they've won 4 of their last 5 games. And they've won 4 of their last 5 games with that one loss being that loss to Atlanta where they fell apart in crunch time and had all the issues that they had there. So like there's a lot to be encouraged about on this front. I still think they have a really good chance to get into the play-in. They're only 1 game back of Utah. They're like, I want to say 3.5 games back to get into that 8th spot to where they where they get 2 chances to win 1 game, which is just a better position to be in the play-in tournament. So big step forward for the Warriors last night. Xavier Tillman and Jaden Springer to the Celtics. So as I talked about yesterday, or I should say on Tuesday, in my opinion, the Celtics, from what we had heard, had been doing some digging on a backup guard. They'd been doing some digging on a backup wing, and they had been doing some digging on a backup center. And one of the things I said was I viewed the backup center position of the biggest importance. I just have a better feeling about Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum being healthy for a playoff run than I do Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis. That, to me, is where they needed a little bit more margin for error. Xavier Tillman, I obviously he's not as good as an Andre Drummond, but in my opinion, a very solid backup big to go to. This is a guy that slides his feet pretty well and has good anticipation guarding bigger, stronger forwards around the league. So like, I think he's an option that you can throw at the likes of Bam Adebayo or Giannis Antetokounmpo or Julius Randle for maybe a couple of minutes a half, just to kind of give yourself a decent option in that specific situation. He's one of those guys too that like not a high percentage 3-point shooter, but will take them, and a guy that can make them. And so I just thought it was a solid backup option, a more steady backup option than some of the other options that they've gone to, and brings a real like size and physicality to the position that I think will be valuable to them in the playoffs. Jaden Springer, outstanding athlete at the guard position, one of the better perimeter defender prospects that we've seen from the guard position in a long time. Really limited offensively and has a lot to gain on that end of the floor, but he's only 21 years old. But the defensive end is what is exciting. Last night against Steph Curry, from the opening tip, just ball denial, aggression, physical all over the floor, did a great job kind of taking Steph out of the offense. Now, it was a team-wide scheme from Nick Nurse, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I thought it was a really impressive individual performance from Jaden Springer. And here's the thing, I don't think Jaden Springer is going to be some sort of significant weapon for the Celtics this season, but for basically a second-round pick to bring in a 21-year-old guard prospect that has the potential to be an awesome defensive player, I really like the move. So good couple of upgrades for the Celtics.